out of Detroit, and sounded real good this still morning. Yep, this morning. Just about. No, it's not Super Bowl Sunday yet. What do you call it? Super Bowl Eve.
This is D-Lab, your resource for repair of vintage ham radio transmitters and receivers. I specialize on Johnsons and Nationals. I'll work on the others, but I prefer these. So today in the shop, I have a National 300 receiver. It was actually nicknamed the Dream receiver back in the day. I think they were built in the late 50s up to about the mid 60s. A gorgeous receiver, about the size of an air conditioner. This one has a common problem that I've seen over the years on many of these NC-300s. So before I fix it, I want to show you what's going on so that if you have this problem, you can fix yours too. Here we go. So you can see this one is a real beauty. I mean, cosmetically, she's perfect. Yes, it has been repainted and it's been restored. It's been recapped and aligned, okay? What's nice about the NC-300s is it's like opening the hood on your car to get to the internals for tube replacement, whereas some of the older receivers you had to pull them out of the cabinet every time. It was a real pain in the keister. Not the NC-300, alright? So let me show you what the problem is. So I've had many of these receivers come in over the years and guys say, I believe there's something wrong with my crystal calibrator, okay? Move this out of the way. Got the top open now. So here's what the deal is. Your receiver works great, right? You're able to tune around. Good audio. Now I'm just using a jumper wire for antenna, so don't expect the world here, but here's where the issue is, okay? Turn my RF gain back and bring my audio up. Clean as a whistle, right? Now watch what happens when I touch the calibrator. Hear that? There's some snapping and popping, and at times you'll get some hum in your audio, okay? So what a lot of people say is, well, I got in there and I cleaned up the contacts on that octal socket because the calibrator does plug in to the chassis, okay? So I'm going to pop him out. So you can see has an octal plug, and that goes into the calibrator socket in the NC-300. So a lot of people believe it's just a bad connection on the octal socket. Well, that is not the case. Let me show you what it really is. Well, if you refer to your schematic, you'll see the calibrator socket right there. So take a look at the pins that it uses. Okay, you got 6-volt AC, which of course turns on the little tube in the calibrator. You have a ground. You've got this line here which goes to your calibrator switch, turns on and off 150 volts, right? And then this is the output line that goes to your antenna terminal, right? So that's all there is. Do you see anything there in the audio path? There's not. However, what you don't see is that this ground that feeds this tube socket also grounds audio sections in the NC-300. So if you develop a bad connection here on the ground, it'll affect the audio and you'll believe that there's just a problem with the socket, but it's not. It's the connections underneath. So how does it happen? Well, take a look at the size of that giant metal box, and it's a very heavy metal box that they built the calibrator in, and it simply plugs in here on the chassis, okay? So you have all this weight that can flex back and forth. You hear it? Right? So that's what causes it, is this weight actually fatigues the socket pins, which in turn breaks loose some connections underneath. So let's pop this guy out of the cabinet and take a look at it. So what I believe is happening is, since this ground is also the ground for the filament circuit that goes up through the calibrator, when it loses the ground, you get that AC that's feeding back into the audio section through that 100 ohm resistor, okay? So now let me get real close here and see if we can spot the bad connection. All right, the radio is powered down and unplugged. pay close attention to these leads right here when I'm moving this. This tool is not good for the job. Get a screwdriver in there so I can get a little more. See that lead? See how it's rocking right in and out of that ground lug down there? That's the problem. So I would say you could just simply resolder that, but you should also try to make sure there's a good mechanical connection. Rather than the lead just shooting through that little lug, it should be bent over so that it gets a little bit better mechanical connection, so you don't rely on just the solder to make the good ground. And that should fix it. So remember, this connection is dirty and corroded from being like this over the years. So make sure to put some rosin in there before you resolder the connection. There's plenty of heat. Flow in some new solder. Should be as good as new. Alright, let's verify our repair. I've got the calibrator installed. I'm going to rock it around. Crank up my audio. So we got audio. Problem solved. So keep this in mind, guys. If you have some strange audio hum that comes and goes on your NC-300s, I betcha you'll find this is the issue. So what would be a way to avoid the fatigue that the calibrator causes on that socket? Would be really nice if there was actually a bracket that would screw this module down to the chassis to stabilize it. If you look at some of the older calibrators like this one, which was the XCU50, it's missing, but there used to be a thumb screw that would come up through this hole and it would exit out the bottom, and this one would actually screw right down to the chassis and hold it very securely. For some reason, when they did the XCU300s, they took away that feature. The other thing is if you ever ship an NC-300, make sure to pull this guy out, wrap it up separately, because if you don't, it becomes a projectile and will destroy everything on the chassis. Well, that problem's fixed, so while you're in there, you have access. You might as well take a little deoxit to the switches, check your controls, make sure everything in there is tight, and then you can put her back in service. The old NC-300 is by far my favorite AM receiver. Alright, so let's check the function of that calibrator. I'm on 80 meters. We'll tune up here to 3.8. You can see her coming up. Go to sideband, get a little bit of a tone out of it. Of course, you can peak it with your antenna. So it's working well. One thing I wanted to point out about this NC-300, which I found was very unique. Take a look at the S meter. Look at the artwork in that S meter. I've never seen one like this. I'm going to show you what they normally look like on my other NC-300s. So here is my NC-300 that I have in line with a Johnson Ranger 2. And take a look at this meter. It's got the diamond, whereas the other one has some kind of a fancy national logo in it. So I don't know if that's because that is a newer receiver or it's just kind of an oddball. I don't know. I've never seen it, not even on the 303. So I thought that was very cool. So there she is on 40 meter AM. NC-300 wasn't just tuned for tomorrow. It was tuned for decades to come. Great receiver. Hope you enjoyed the video.
And being the vintage that it is, you know, I was quite pleasantly surprised to see that it did that good a job on I was working to hook up with his beaker testing, testing, testing.